Welcome to Jewish World Weekly on I-24 News. I'm Emily Francis. Every week, we're focusing on stories, issues, and personalities of Jewish interest here in Israel and in the diaspora, the global Jewish community. And we're starting with our top 5 items in the Jewish world, presented by our very own Sarah Rogers. Hi, Sarah.
Thanks, Emily. Here are the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. U.S. President Donald Trump nominated Chabad Rabbi Yehuda Kaplun as the U.S. Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. Kaplun and Trump have enjoyed a long-standing relationship, with Kaplun having played an active role in Jewish communities for Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. Upon nomination by the Senate, he will succeed Deborah Lipstadt, who was appointed by former President Joe Biden. Staying in the U.S. and on the fight against anti-Semitism, this time on the American campuses, 10 Jewish organizations are condemning Trump administration's repression on non-citizen activists and universities. Among the 10 Jewish groups are the Union for Reform Judaism, the National Council of Jewish Women, and the Jewish Council for Public Affairs. In a joint statement published last week, although they recognize the severe need to combat anti-Semitism, they declared that they reject, quote, any policies or actions that foment or take advantage of anti-Semitism and pit communities against one another. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Archwell Foundation has recently cut ties with US-based Milwaukee Muslim Women's Coalition. After finding out that its founder, Palestinian-American Janan Najib, had made anti-Israel comments, the foundation decided to remove the group from its network. In a letter, Archwell's executives declared that the foundation has, quote, zero tolerance for hateful words, actions, or propaganda. Staying with the royals, David Sassoon, the Jewish royal designer, died at 92. The former co-director of the couture house Belleville Sassoon had designed over 70 outfits for Princess Diana. In a 2023 interview, he declared that Jewish traditions played an enormous part in the clothes that he designed. And let's finish with Noah Argamani, who is named among Time magazine's 100 most influential people in 2025. Since her release, the 27-year-old survivor of Hamas captivity has taken the role of an informal ambassador of the hostages' cause around the globe, especially for her partner, Avinatan Or, who remains in captivity. Among the list, a few other Jewish figures feature, such as Oscar-winning actor Adrian Brody and the Anti-Defamation League CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt. Those are your top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. Back to you, Emily.
The Jewish world celebrated Passover last week, including the family of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. But on the first night of Passover, his home was targeted in an arson attack, with a suspect targeting him because of his views on Israel. Despite Shapiro's criticism of Prime Minister Netanyahu, here's more from our Joe Brown.
On the first night of Passover, the Shapiro family sat around the Seder table to recount the horrors their Jewish ancestors experienced. Hours later, the family experienced a horror of its own, targeted with a plague-like arson attack on the Pennsylvania governor's mansion.
Last night, we experienced an attack not just on our family, but on the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
In the early hours of the Saturday morning that followed the first night of Passover, Governor Josh Shapiro, his wife, and 4 children were informed by state troopers that they had to leave their home immediately due to an emergency.
Lori and I are overwhelmed by the prayers and the messages of support that we've received from all across Pennsylvania and all across the United States.
38-year-old Cody Balmer climbed over the fence into the property and set fire to the dining hall using a homemade incendiary device. He also planned on attacking the governor with a hammer. He was in the premises for just 1 minute before fleeing, evading police before eventually being caught and admitting to the crimes.
The charges will include attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault against an enumerated person.
Police later said that the motive was Shapiro's support of Israel in its war with Hamas. Balmer told the police that he wanted to, quote, stop having my friends killed, and that, quote, our people have been through too much by that monster. Shapiro identifies as a liberal Zionist. He volunteered for the IDF as a teenager. However, he has been critical of the Netanyahu government and its actions throughout the war. One of the rising stars of the Democratic Party, he is among the favourites to lead the Democratic ticket in the 2028 presidential election. And whilst he is shaken by what transpired on the Jewish holiday, he is urging for unity in a time where rhetoric and words have frequently led to dangerous actions.
This type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop. We have to be better than this.
As anti-Semitism on university campuses continue to hit a fever pitch, measures are being taken by the Trump administration to snuff out calls for intifada and death to Jews. Most recently, President Trump sliced $2 billion in funding to Harvard University and millions more to other elite universities that condone violence against Jewish students. A popular documentary, October 8th, is now becoming even more relevant in this polarized climate toward the Jewish people. Take a listen.
When anti-Zionism becomes the defining feature of a society, what happens to Jews practically? And here the record is clear. As soon as anti-Zionism became the ideology of the Arab world in the 30s and 40s and 50s, no Jews were left. And you are talking about Jewish communities that predated the Arab and Muslim conquests of North Africa and the Levant and the Middle East. And the mechanism is always the same. They say we have nothing against Jews. It's not about Jews. It's only Zionists. But then they blame Jews for harboring Zionist sympathies. And then they turn on the Jews, and the Jews understand, and they leave. And the same thing that we're seeing right now on American campuses. When anti-Zionism begins to become a dominant feature of campus ideology, of academic ideology, the environment turns hostile to Jewish life.
We have Zionists, who have entered the camp. We are going to create a human chain. So that we can start to push them out of the camp. One step forward. Another step forward.
They're turning the campus into what they're calling a Gaza solidarity encampment.
Joining us now from New York is Wendy Sachs, the executive producer and the director of October 8th. Thank you for being here. Chilling. I saw the timestamp. It was exactly a year ago when those encampments started, and we're still in the middle of this mess.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
Listen, this film is all about what happened after October 7th on American college campuses and on social media and in the streets of America. The explosion of anti-Semitism that we've never seen before in the country. So what's happening today is incredibly relevant. It makes the film even more timely with what the Trump administration is doing to try to lock down the anti-Semitism on campus right now. They're taking pretty aggressive moves, which are being applauded in some circles and not in others. But, some action needs to happen.
Right. Also, the fact that you made this film, you were starting to work on it, obviously quite a while ago. What made you decide to do it also when you did, so immediately after October 7th and everything that was happening around the world?
You know, I saw the hostility right on October 8th when we saw that Hamas was being celebrated as freedom fighters rather than as terrorists in New York's Times Square and in London and around the world. I'm actually speaking to you right now from Montreal because we're doing a screening tonight, and there's been crazy protests happening in Montreal protesting the film. You know, the sort of anti-Semitism that exists in Canada. It's not just happening in the States. It's not just happening in Europe, but it's, you know, in Canada. Is really alarming. But really, when I saw this sort of level of hostility meeting the silence, right? It was silence coming from Hollywood and the entertainment industry that always speaks out on social injustice. It was coming from Capitol Hill. It was coming from even people within my own professional networks.
Yeah.
I knew that I needed to do something. I mean, the abandonment, I think, that we all felt. I mean, listen, we still have an American hostage, a 21-year-old, Idan Alexander. No one knows his name. No one's talking about him. It's been 557 days. And yet, like, that to me was just such a gutting feeling, and still continues to be. And I just knew that I needed to make this film to unpack how did we get to this moment where the smartest people in America, the young people at the most elite institutions in America, are celebrating Hamas. How did this happen?
Obviously, people seeming to be experts on, you know, a conflict that is so complex, you know, unless you've been studying this for a long time, I mean, you cannot simplify it. So what do you make of the fact that people are buying into the narrative and really hijacking what Zionism really means?
What we're seeing throughout academia and in the media and in NGOs, places like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, it's really become the perfect storm. I mean, I think what we see in the film is sort of unpacking this Venn diagram of the overlapping nature of what's fed into this idea that, again, that Israel is not a legitimate state. And what we do in the film is try to, you know, look at all of the different areas where this has happened, and particularly college campuses. And we focus on Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, a student organization that is not like other student groups like Students for Climate Change or Students for Reproductive Freedom. This is an organization that is being led by Hamas, if not Hamas, Hamas-aligned organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood and American Muslims for Palestine. And they were getting their marching orders on October 8th from Hamas-aligned organizations. And this is what we're unpacking. We show in the film, and one of the most revelatory scenes is that Hamas in America back in 1993, there's an FBI wiretap that we reveal. And you can hear people, you know, people in this hotel room, Hamas in America, talking about how are they going to infiltrate America. And they're going to, when they're speaking to people on the left, they're going to talk in terms of apartheid and colonialism. When they're speaking to people on the right, they're going to frame it in terms of patriotism and the founding fathers. They were looking to infiltrate American institutions, the media and universities. They were playing the long game. This has been going on for 30 years. So it's no surprise on October 8th, what we saw on college campuses in the eruption of anti-Semitism, but also using the same messaging coming from Hamas and the same iconography, the upside-down red triangle that Hamas uses to target the IDF. That upside-down red triangle was graffitied on buildings across America, including on statues like the Benjamin Franklin statue at the University of Pennsylvania. So what we're showing is that this is a long time in the making. It's sophisticated, it's savvy, and Hamas in America has known what they were doing. And I think it took a lot of people in America and diaspora Jews by surprise. Yeah. We have been at the wheel.
You know, even the Green Prince sort of interviewed, I mean, he himself, like we're saying, they're masters of propaganda, and people don't seem to look at the facts. I myself, a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, walked by that Benjamin Franklin statue. I was there. It was a cohesive university, people of all colors, all religions. It was never a thing, you know, and to be able to see this really is so painful and a stab in the gut.
I mean, listen, it's stunning. And I think that for so many American Jews, you know, it really took people by surprise. Other people have been tracking this for years, have been sort of, you know, warning what's happening on the left. And I think, again, 70% of American Jews are registered Democrats. You don't want to believe that this is really happening, right? You stand for progressive values. If you're on the side of reproductive freedom and LGBTQ rights and sort of all the other, you know, social issues that we, I think, as Jews really celebrate. It's been very, very distressing to see what's happening on the left, again, with this sort of hijacking of the narrative, with the delegitimizing of the state of Israel. And that's the foundation.
And not forgetting everything Jews did for, you know, marginalized communities. That seems to be forgotten also.
And that's the theme of the film. You know, the first interview that I booked and that I did was Congressman Richie Torres. He's Black, he's Latino, he's gay, and he is unapologetically supportive of the state of Israel and calls out the hypocrisy and the double standards and the bias. And he's an incredible spokesperson, but he also talks about that incredible history that the African-American community and the Jewish community in America have together on civil rights. And so when he about, you know, he's the one who came up with the tagline for our film, "The Fight for the Soul of America," and that's what this is about. This is about humanity. The film is not about the Jewish community, and frankly, it's not about the state of Israel. We are talking about extremism and Islamic jihadism versus democracy in the West. That is what this is about.
Well, and you know, the extremism on any side, you know, is dangerous. I mean, you're getting it on both sides. So now that the Trump administration is doing, you know, what they're doing, I imagine there's a reaction, and people always want to blame the Jews.
We are seeing the backlash. There's no question about it. And, you know, listen, my film is not political. It's not ideological. It's not preachy. While there are reviewers, even reviewers in Israel, who are trying to frame the film as some sort of right-wing film, it is not. I challenge anyone to watch the film to really see for themselves. We are just unpacking how we got to this moment. But we are not litigating the war. We are not litigating the Bibi government. We are not litigating settlements.
Mistakes on both sides. I mean, problems on both sides. It's not people. It doesn't mean everybody here agrees with what's happening.
For sure. And everyone should be able to criticize the government. It's healthy. It's part of democracy. That is, you know, I am a First Amendment, hardcore First Amendment champion. And I believe that everyone should be able to have freedom of expression. But we are talking about hate speech. We are talking about crossing the line. We are talking about the Jewish community, Jewish students being targeted and harassed and bullied and threatened in a way that would never be allowed to any other community. It just wouldn't be allowed to happen on a college campus. That's what we're talking about here. It's not about free speech.
Well, thank you very much, Wendy. I mean, definitely a noble project, a lot of bravery. I imagine you're you know, getting a lot of backlash yourself, and you know, good for you for doing something about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Known as the Parliament of the Jewish People, the World Zionist Congress elections take place every 4 years, but this year's election is especially important in the wake of the October 7th massacre and war against Hamas, with candidates from 22 different political parties. However, there are new allegations that a handful of those parties engaged in voter fraud, with reports showing that several thousand votes for these particular parties were cast from the same location using suspicious credit cards and unverifiable contact details. The director of the American Zionist movement overseeing the election is investigating and saying, quote, "We are trying to ensure a fair and transparent election, and as well as being vigilant in identifying and stopping any fraudulent behavior." Joining us now from Washington is senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wagenheim. Hello to you, Mike. Let's start with, please explain the World Zionist Congress and why these elections are so important.
As you mentioned, Emily, this is the Parliament of the Jewish people. This Congress goes back to 1897, to Theodore Herzl's creation, and it involves essentially control over billions of dollars that go to major Jewish institutions like the Jewish Agency for Israel and other entities, and it controls not only the money but the influence over how those institutions act with regards to any number of issues that affect Jewish life in Israel and in the diaspora as well. It controls the extent of religious affairs and the separation between religion and state, even judicial reform. It's essentially a referendum not only on the Israeli government itself, but on Jewish leadership here in the diaspora too. So there's a lot of vying for control, a lot of vying to direct the next few years of where Jewish life is headed, not only in Israel, but around the world. It means a lot to a lot of different people around the globe, Emily.
Well, and especially, whoever makes those seats, obviously their work is very, very important. But it's, as if we don't have enough fraud, political division in the world. What are these accusations? And do you know, are the groups very different that are being accused or more along the same lines?
Well, it's important to note, number one, none of these slates are defined as political, essentially, to begin with. There's no Democrat versus Republican. Obviously, some are more liberal, some are conservative, some have a religious bent, some have a secular bent. There are all sorts of special interest groups that are involved in these particular slates, as they call them, or lists or groups of candidates. But the focus on this particular fraud happens to be on coming out of a couple of yeshivas, which would indicate just by common sense that it's a couple of religious slates. They have not been identified publicly, even in a confidential letter that we were able to view from the groups that are accusing those particular slates of fraud and want them disqualified from the race. It's notable, though, the 6 groups that filed this complaint that are calling for a transparent public investigation and a public accounting and are also calling for those slates to be removed from the race altogether. Those groups are very, very divergent from all over the religious and political, if you will, spectrum. So it's an odd coalition of groups that are calling right now for full transparency in this purported fraud.
And it just goes to show that the momentum is there to push for this, especially now. It's so important, these elections and what they're going to be doing moving forward. Thank you very much, Senior U.S. Correspondent Mike Wagenheim. Her name has been read by tens of millions around the world, but her story, for the most part, has remained under wraps. That is, until now. Ilse Wagner was a classmate of Anne Frank, and she also died in a Nazi death camp. Last week, family members commemorated Ilse in Amsterdam, unveiling a brass plaque in the pavement just outside the home from which they were deported. Here's more.
Ilse was a very normal girl with a very normal life in Hamburg. She was an Orthodox Jewish girl, and she was an only child.
Ilse's grandmother was my father's aunt, and my grandfather, her brother, there were like 10 children, so it was a big family. And they would get together a lot on Shabbat and holidays.
After the Kristallnacht, the pogrom, then they decided to come to the Netherlands, and she became one of the friends of Anne Frank.
In Hamburg, there are Stoppelsteins for both my grandmothers who were killed. And so it's just growing. The family is growing as far as Stoppelsteins go. And this is beautiful, and it's beautiful they're all together. Because they weren't, they were separated and killed.
Something like 6 million is a figure you can't fathom. And but one, if you tell the story of one person, that might translate, that might transfer to another human being.
More on history seemingly to report itself. We're introducing you to another Holocaust survivor, 103-year-old Margot Friedlander, who received Germany's Westphalian Peace Prize for her lifetime achievement. This prize honors special commitment to sustainable peace and international understanding, something that Margot was doing her whole life with her commitment to educating a younger generation about the horrors of the Holocaust. Here's more from our Lynn Plachmeyer.
103-year-old Holocaust survivor Margot Friedlander has won the prestigious German prize, the International Award of the Peace of Westphalia, for her long contribution to humanity, tolerance, peace and democracy.
Ich spreche nicht für. I'm not speaking for the 6 million innocent people who were killed, but for all the people who were murdered because people did not respect them as human beings. Today is another time when peace is under threat, both externally and internally. I don't need many words for my message. There is no Christian blood, no Muslim blood, no Jewish blood. There is only human blood. We are all the same. Be human beings.
Friedlander was born in Berlin in 1921 and was the sole survivor of her family during the Holocaust, having been transported to Theresienstadt in 1944. After more than 60 years in exile in New York, Friedlander returned to Berlin at the age of 88 and took German citizenship to pass on her message to the younger generation, engaging in school visits and other events. Through the years, she became one of the oldest and most famous Holocaust survivors in the world, and even becoming a choice for the front page of a fashion Vogue magazine last year. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier applauded Friedlander's efforts in a speech during the ceremony.
Verantwortung kennt keinen Schlussstrich.
Responsibility knows no end. We are seeing this today when democracy is more challenged than it has perhaps been for 80 years. And precisely because we are aware of what you, Margot Friedlander, bear living witness to. And we will defend democracy and freedom against its scorners and its enemies. The prize we are honoring you with will be an obligation for us. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Former U.S. President Joe Biden also attended the ceremony, during which he also sang her praises.
Margot Friedlander, you are a voice of conscience and healing. I'm actually honored to be in your presence, for real.
Historically, the award is linked to the peace in Westphalia, which ended the devastating 30 Years' War and was signed in the town halls of Münster and Osnabrück in 1648, a milestone in the history of European unification.
What a legend. That is all for this week's episode of Jewish World Weekly. I'm Emily Francis. Feel free to head over to I-24 News YouTube channel, where you could catch up not only on this episode, but other episodes of Jewish World Weekly. Thank you so much for watching, and shalom from Tel Aviv.